All right. Good morning, and thanks for joining us, everyone. Here we are. My name is Jose Marti with Delta Orthopedics, physician assistant. We're meeting with Robert Burke, goes by Bo, so we're going to call him Bo throughout the day. And we're just going to chat a little bit about what we do. I deal mainly with the medical aspect of personal injuries, car-related incidents, falls, and that kind of stuff. And Bo is going to work mainly on the side as an attorney. He's going to work on the legal side. Feel free to jump in, ask any questions as we go along. Bo, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Bo. I like to know. I know Tristan and Hill pretty well, but I haven't had the pleasure of spending enough time with you, particularly on the personal injury side. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been with the practice? And we'll jump into questions in a little bit.
Yeah, so I graduated law school in 2011. Been practicing since then, so it's 12-ish years now.
Oh, wow.
I started off at a relatively small law firm in downtown Atlanta. We represented a lot of restaurants, so like big name restaurants, McDonald's, Krispy Kreme, Chick-fil-A, places like that. So I got a lot of experience in falls and stuff of that nature.
Right.
A lot of people falling over there. I did that for almost a decade. Then I switched sides, got tired of saving insurance companies money, sort of thing. So switched sides, spent a couple of years at another firm, and then I joined Tristan and Hill over here just right out a year ago.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. And you've been doing personal injury for how long now?
So either defending or representing plaintiffs for my entire career. So going on 12 years at this point.
So you understand how both sides work. You understand both mindsets, That's awesome. And for those of you that are joining us and that, have no idea or any idea what personal injury is, pretty much anything that has to do with car accidents, falls, when it comes to insurances and a motor vehicle accident can happen using a motorcycle, can involve a pedestrian, can involve even a boat, so that's something that we all can talk about today. And if anyone, I'm going to start with questions. If anyone has any question, feel free to put them on the chat, and then we'll just kind of jump on those questions accordingly. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and get started, okay? All right, so first question is, and again, we'll kind of double team the question, and I'll do it more from the medical side, and Bo will go ahead and jump in from the legal side. The first question is, so a person has an accident, let's say a car accident this time around. Well, I like to talk about falls a little bit too. But a car accident happens, let's say on the interstate. What's the first thing from there on? Okay, the patient or your client is freaking out. What do I do next?
The first thing you need to do is make sure you're all right, right? Like do a check head to toe, what hurts, what doesn't hurt. Just kind of make sure nothing's massively injured or anything like that. If there's anybody else in the car, you want to kind of do the same thing with all that. And then you want to make sure you are, to the best of your ability, in as safe a position as you can be.
Right.
If you get into an accident in the middle of the interstate, you're in the middle lane sort of thing. If it's possible to get your car off to the side or something like that, what you want to do first is always make sure you're safe and as healthy as you can be at that point. Afterwards, what you want to do is try to make sure you understood what happened, do that sort of stuff, and it's usually a good idea to go ahead and call 911. Even for minor accidents where it's like not a whole lot of property damage or anything like that, without a police report, a lot of insurance companies are going to start questioning what happened and how it happened and if it even happened. Like I've had cases where the insurance company denied a crash happened entirely because there wasn't a police report.
Right.
So even if you don't want to be dealing with the police or anything like that, it's usually a good idea to call them anyway, sort of thing. Make sure you're nice and calm with them. And just give your version of events, try to make it as short and sweet as possible. Don't argue with the officer. Don't do any of that sort of stuff. Even if the officer gets it wrong, there's stuff you can do afterwards. The most important part is to just make sure that you have that police report like immediately after.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, but I definitely agree. So I definitely pull over. Make sure that you're safe, that the car is safe, and everyone in the car is safe. Take your time. Definitely don't stay in traffic. I actually had a patient. He had just gotten in a car accident. It wasn't his fault. And as he was getting out of the car while in the highway, well, actually, no, he was in Main Street, not the highway. He was hit as a pedestrian. He was actually hit by another vehicle. So, one motor vehicle accident, the one that he was just involved in, and the second motor vehicle accident is the one he was actually hit almost as a pedestrian by the second vehicle. So definitely be sure that you are safe, and nerves do run high as soon as you get into a car accident because it's just too much going on, and typically you're you're either late or you're got to be somewhere, obviously. So just make sure you take your time at that point. Just stop and make sure that you're safe. Bo, I want to spend some time while we're at it because we do a lot. We do talk a lot in this program about car accidents, but we don't take a whole lot of time talking about faults. So, let's say I'm at Walmart and there's some detergent on the floor, and I don't see it. I slip and fall. What happens next? What is the typical place Walmart, whatever, Target, their neighborhood restaurant? What happens there?
Yeah, for the most part, no matter where you are, if you fall down, you want to do two things. You want to figure out what caused you to fall down. I've had multiple people call me trying to set up fall cases where they got pretty badly hurt and everything. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, for the side of the person's been hurt, it's their requirement under the law to prove what caused them to fall and how they fell, and what to prove that is, in fact, it's usually the business owner's fault. So Walmart or the restaurant or something like that. So I've definitely had people call me up and be like, yeah, no, I fell. What caused your fall? I don't know. I was walking and then I fell down. It's like, you got to have more than that. So like, usually it's a good idea. Like, again, with the car accident, you want to sit there for a second and do a check. Like, am I all right? What hurts? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Assuming all that, usually it's a good idea while you're still sitting on the ground to look around and be like, what in the world made me fall? Right? Like, was the water on the floor? Was it detergent? Did I trip over a step that's hard to see? What is it? Like, I've had people trip over the mats. Like, when it's raining and they put those mats out at the front door, they get kicked up and they're weird. And it's hard to tell if there's a bump in the middle of it, and you get your toe caught on that and you fall for that reason. So you want to figure out what caused you to fall. And it's usually a good idea to go ahead and whip out your phone and start taking the pictures of whatever it is to cause your fall. Because I've had multiple cases with Walmart specifically where they have denied that there was anything there, and they show up with these pictures. And I'm like, look, we took pictures of the ground. There was nothing on the ground. And then I get the surveillance footage from the surveillance cameras afterwards, and they took the pictures after they had cleaned up what was on the floor. Right. So it was pretty obvious in those situations, but you get into some of these like smaller restaurants or gas stations and there's not surveillance footage to prove that sort of thing. And they just show up with these pictures. Like, we took these right after the crash or right after the fall.
Right.
There was nothing on the ground. She just tripped on over her own feet. That's not our fault. So it's usually a good idea to try to get some pictures of it. The second most important thing to do is you have to make sure you report it. Don't fight with them about it. Just say, hey, I had a fall. I just want to make sure it got reported. Talk to the manager. You don't even have to tell them what happened to the fall. Just like, I fell over there 5 minutes ago. Just wanted to make sure you guys had a report of it. When you're dealing with companies like Kroger, Walmart, Chick-fil-A, Hooters, Texas Roadhouse, places like that, they've got very standard procedures for what to do when someone reports a fall. And the reason you want to do that is because that puts them on notice that they need to start saving evidence. Right. So then if they don't save evidence, we can use that against them later on if you end up needing to do that. But if you don't put them on notice, and then, a couple of weeks go by and you're like, man, I still hurt. Then you go to the doctor and it's a month later before you tell them that you fell. The video's gone. There's no incident report. They don't remember who was working that day, all that sort of stuff. And we can't, and then, they had pictures of the fall or whatnot. There won't be the video because they didn't save it.
Right.
Sort of thing. So it was always a good idea. Again, it doesn't matter how they handle it at that point. A lot of times they're obnoxious. Do not believe anything they say. They'll tell you the insurance company will call you. They'll tell you the insurance company is going to cover your bills. None of that's true. Right? They'll tell you whatever they need to do because the person you're talking to.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah, their job at that point is customer service, right? Like they don't care about the legal side of it. Their job is customer service. But once you put them on notice and, they do it, they'll fill out an incident report. And most of the bigger companies and even a lot of the smaller ones have very specific procedures of this is what we do when someone gets hurt, sort of thing. And you put them on notice. And those are single-handedly the two most important things to do right after a fall is to figure out what caused you to fall and make sure that someone in management at wherever it is you fell was put on notice of the fact that you fell, whether you're hurt or not. Just go ahead and put them on notice. One, because you want them to clean up whatever it was that you fell on. So
right. You don't want other people to fall on it, right?
Yeah. And two, once you tell them you fall, then they are now they now have knowledge that there was a fall, and it is not uncommon. And I'm sure you can probably speak more to this than I can, but it's not uncommon for someone to have a fall. They're embarrassed, their adrenaline's running, sort of thing, and they don't start feeling pain until 24, 48 hours later. Right. And so I've definitely had people that have called me up and said, yeah, no, I had a fall like a week ago. I didn't feel any pain for like 24 hours or anything like that. And then they don't do anything about it for the week. And at that point, I'm like, we're starting to run into issues with any legal case you might have because they don't know that it even happened.
Right. So we have Andrea is jumping in. I think this is statute of limitations kind of question. So what if I had a car accident and never put a claim? Can I do it now, or is it too late?
So there's a couple of different things going on with this. Generally speaking, you've got 2 years is the basic rule. It gets a lot more complicated than that. And there's also a lot of different types of claims for a car accident, right? So like if there's property damage and you call and you get the property damage handled, you set up a claim, right? The insurance company knows about it. They might not have known that you were hurt or anything like that, but you have set up the claim. But if you get in a car accident, you don't get the damage fixed or whatever, and you just kind of keep rolling on with your day sort of thing. Technically you have 2 years, but
really,
but that is to file a lawsuit, right? And so if you wait until, because I've had people call me up like, yeah, I got in a car accident 22 months ago, sort of thing. I went to the doctor and all that sort of stuff. And, someone told me that, the other person's insurance might be responsible for this. You're going to have a hard time finding a lawyer that's going to be able to help you with that.
Okay.
Because we don't know the facts, right? Like it can be considered malpractice for me to start filing lawsuits, and I can get in trouble with the bar to file a lawsuit. I don't know all the facts, because when I sign my name to a lawsuit, I'm literally saying to the court under my bar license, I have reason to believe that these facts are true. And I personally, as an attorney, have a duty to have investigated those. I can't just take your word for it necessarily.
Right.
Sort of thing. And so drafting the lawsuit, getting it set up, finding the defendant, getting all that sort of stuff done, trying to get that done in a couple of weeks, even like 8 weeks can be really difficult to do. And you're essentially stepping into something you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I generally tell people at the absolute latest, you've got to have an attorney and be ready to go for a lawsuit at about 18 months after, a year and a half after any sort of crash or fall. This is the same for falls, anything like that. If you don't have an attorney by that point, there's a good chance you're not going to find one. And because there's just not a whole lot we can do. So it's usually a good idea to go ahead and file the claim earlier, or to get the earlier you get an attorney involved, even if nothing ever comes of it. The earlier you get an attorney involved, the more likely it is that you're going to have done it correctly. Because
that actually leads us to our next question. So that's great that that kind of segued in. So just to recap, an accident and a fall, wherever it happens, make sure that you reach safety. Make sure that after that's done, you document, whether it's through picture or video, as much information as you can regarding that accident, injury, as well as whatever's happened on in the scene of the incident, and then get the authorities involved, whether that may be a store clerk, or associate, or that may be the police as soon as possible. Whether the accident is significant or you feel like it's minor, definitely get someone involved as soon as possible. It is very important that whatever may have happened from an injury standpoint is documented as quickly as possible. So, from a medical standpoint, not only do we want to help you medically, but also we want to be able to, alongside the attorney, help you create a case. If that is not, and at that point, time is of the essence. So we need to make sure that we do it as soon as possible, so that when the attorney goes, to quote unquote fight your case, has not only all the evidence, but then everything is documented in a timely fashion. And it's not like, okay, my neck hurt here, and 2-3 months later my lower back started to hurt, and then we're trying to dump everything on the case. It may not work very well. So it's very important that we remain as thorough as possible. And that brings me to another thought of mine is, whenever the patient is seen after whatever accident may be, whether it's a car accident or a fall, often the patient will lean towards what is hurting the most. Try to avoid that. Try to just be as thorough as possible. Even if the neck is hurting a little bit, you never know if the pain may worsen or may get better. So let's make sure we document that, and then we can kind of move from there. Okay. Anything that you have to add to that, Bo?
Yeah, I would say one of the other things to keep in mind is to make sure there are doctors who do personal injuries type stuff, and there are doctors who don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors that do it are typically going to be more thorough and making sure that they're doing a lot of the doctors we work with, they're like,
that's a great point.
Did your head hurt? Do your eyes hurt? Do your ears hurt? Like, they'll work all the way down the body and ask about all of it, so they can make sure they're being thorough. Whereas if you go to like a primary care physician, their goal is to get you in and out as fast as possible, because that's how they make their money, is seeing more people. And so they're just going to say, why are you here today? You're going to give the shortest answer that they'll let you get out. And kind of move on with your day, sort of thing. So that's an important one, especially for working with people like Delta Orthopedics and whatnot, because I know you guys know how to do it.
Right.
Is to make sure you're working with doctors that actually know how to handle a case like this, to make sure that they're documenting it correctly.
Yeah, that's very important, because if we and really a lot of doctors just simply won't see you, and if they see you, especially in the urgent care, they're just making sure that the worst is not to come. You're not going to die from any injury, but outside of that, that's the extent of your care. So, but we can talk for hours on that topic alone, right? So, and we can definitely do this again. Let's jump on this question just popped up. So let's jump on that, and then we'll continue with the next one. So from Alexandra, what should I do after a car accident? What steps should I follow? So, Alexandra, we kind of went over that just right now in the first question, but I'll give you a quick recap from Bo and myself. Is car accident happens, please find safety. Particularly if you're in a highway, you're in an intersection that is busy, whatever it might be, please get to safety. Park along the shoulder, along the side of the road. Make sure that you don't chance another car accident, because you're trying, you don't know what to do, right? So many things are going through your head, and adrenaline is running, all that stuff. The other thing is, make sure that once you do that, you document as much as possible via pictures or camera, with your video camera. The good thing is, who doesn't have a cell phone nowadays that doesn't have a camera and has the ability of taking videos? So please use that as much as possible when you're doing that. Third of all, make sure that you always call the police. Always call the police, whether or not find that it's a minor accident, little bump, or it's a significant accident. There's overturning of the cars or whatever it may be. Always call the police. Make sure there's a police report that is being filled out, and that there is a person that, at least by the police officer that shows up to the scene, there's a party that is found at fault. Okay, that is very important. It's very helpful for the attorneys as the case develops. Okay, so that's the easy answer to that question. Let's just jump on the other one. What if I don't feel emotionally well to do the paperwork with my insurance? That's actually a great question, Bo. I'll let you take that one.
So there's a couple of things going on at once, depending on how bad the car accident was and whether or not you're dealing with a property damage claim or an actual injury claim, because those are two completely separate claims under Georgia law. You can file a property damage claim and have it go all the way through the court system, and then at the same time have a personal injury claim going on, or have it going all the way through the court systems, and completely separate what's called a cause of action.
Mm-hmm.
For generally speaking, the best thing you can do, and it depends on what you're doing, but for the most part, call an attorney, right? Like, you can call me. We've got a very nice Melissa does a lot of our intake. She's a super nice person. It's why we have her doing a lot of the intake.
Right.
She's very empathetic. She'll understand and whatnot. And if nothing else, we can walk you through the process, even if it's not a case we're able to take on or something like that. So that's always one option. The other option is, you're not, most of the time, you've got at least 30 days with your own insurance. It's different for your insurance versus someone else's insurance, but you usually got at least 30 days before you really have to deal with it, right? And so if you need to, you can take some time, take a day or two, kind of get that figured out if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can always call an attorney and at least get some pointers on all of that. Sometimes, depending on how the crash happens, it's better to call faster. So like if it's a disputed liability case, so like I've had several cases where it's a red light, green light dispute, right? And so one person says they had the green light, the other person says they had the green light, they hit in the intersection, one of them's lying, right? Like someone did not have the green light.
Right.
Sort of things. The police officer's not going to tell you who's at fault for that one unless you have a dash cam or you've got some sort of independent witness that says, oh yeah, no, that person ran the red light. I will say I generally recommend all of my friends. Dash cams are fantastic. You can get one for like $50, and it will show. Yeah, it'll show whether or not you had the green light or not. Sort of thing. It'll show whether or not you're going real fast. Like, there's a lot of stuff that it can show, because I've got a lot of cases where someone calls up and says, "Yeah, no, I had the green light," and then they ran through, and I was like, "How do I prove you had the green light?" I'm like, "I don't know." It's like, then I can't prove you had the green light. It's a he said, she said sort of thing. And those are really hard cases, and you got to go all the way to trial on them. And it's at best 50-50, because it's just, who does the jury believe? Right. And so if you're at 50-50 and you're the only way we can win that case is if 12 strangers believe you more than the other guy. That's it, sort of thing. So that's something to keep in mind. That kind of isn't exactly.
Well, that's a lot of good facts there. I definitely don't have a camera on my car, so I'm gonna have to think about that one. But that's a lot of good facts for sure. From a medical standpoint, we can help you with both insurance and obviously on a lien, working with the attorneys. We prefer to work with the attorneys, particularly our guys over here at Morrison and Hughes. It just makes it that much easier. They understand the legal lingo and the whole ins and out more so than us, and we just make a good team at doing so. I will say this. I have not found that the insurance, when you're going directly through insurance, it's as easy or as beneficial for the patient as it will be by using proper representation. And I don't know, you can You can say yes or no to that.
I've definitely got something to add to that. Something to keep in mind: there are no, that I know of, nonprofit car insurance companies. Right? Their job is not to help you. Their job is not to help you
That's
get
a
better.
bumper sticker right there. That
Yeah.
is a bumper
Their
sticker.
job is
There
to
you
put as
go.
much money in
That's
their
awesome.
shareholders' pockets as humanly possible. That is the only job that they have.
Mhm.
They are supposed to follow the law. A lot of times they don't, because a lot of people don't know what the law is, and so they can get away with a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
But they're supposed to follow the law, and they're supposed to put money in their shareholders' pockets. So they're going to pressure you into signing things. They're going to pressure you into going to doctors that you don't like. They're going to pressure you into thinking that you're better. They're going to pressure you into thinking that you aren't entitled to whatever it is you might be
Mhm.
entitled, because their goal is to put as little money in your pocket as possible. Because every dollar they give to you, they cannot give to their shareholders, and they cannot give out in bonuses at the end of the year.
Right.
Right. And so that's why, even if it's a minor accident, you're not very hurt, anything like that, it's always a good idea to have an attorney, because I have
Absolutely.
had people call me up like 6 months later. They're like, I've been with State Farm Mutual for 40 years.
Mhm.
I've, been paying premiums and whatnot. And now they're jerking me around and not paying me when I get hurt,
Right.
sort of things. And I was like, yeah, no, that's their job. That's
Mhm.
what they're supposed to be doing, is not paying you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And something that needs to be understood, it came to mind when you were talking about this. The attorney wants to create a relationship with you that is long standing. So God forbid there's another accident down the line, or family accident, or whatever. You'll have such a good experience that you'll come back. You know, the typical insurance doesn't feel the same way. You know what I mean? So they're not going to give you the same type of care and service that you will. The same thing for us from the orthopedic side. We want to make sure that not only do we help you because it's kind of what we signed up for, but also we want you to consider us in the future. So we're going to do our best to make sure that you get that Chick-fil-A care that you need and want. You know what I mean? So please, that happens. Feel free to contact us. Either one of us can um, get you in touch with each other. So and then we can kind of take it from there. We have another question coming in here from Kinte. And if the other person involved in the accident indicates that he doesn't have insurance, what should I do? That's actually another question that I had here, but that is a great question. And Bo, I think
Yeah, that's all in
that's definitely
my
something we
lane
should
right
touch base on. Yeah.
there. So the only thing you're required to have under Georgia law is what's called liability insurance, right? And not everyone has that. And you
Mhm.
can, one of the ways I can generally tell if we're going into a recession or coming out of one is the number of calls I get where people are calling up saying the other guy doesn't have any insurance. What do I do? Because the
Right.
first thing people stop paying is car insurance, right?
Mhm.
Because you have to keep the house on, you have to keep the lights on, you got to keep gas in the car, you got to go to work, you got to do groceries. But you can stop paying your car insurance and nothing bad happens to you unless you get into a crash,
Okay.
right? So that's one of the first things people stop paying when they start getting behind on bills.
Mhm.
Sort of thing. So there's several things that can happen. The easiest thing that you can do is to make sure that you are properly insured yourself. You're only required to have liability insurance, but there's a type of insurance. It's called underinsured motorist coverage or uninsured motorist coverage. Everyone in the industry just calls it UM.
Mhm.
Covers both of it, and that insurance covers you if the other person doesn't have insurance, or if the other person doesn't have enough insurance. Because in Georgia, you're only required to carry what's called 2550, which means that the most that any one person that gets hurt in a crash with a person that has minimum limits is $25,000. That's got to cover attorney's fees. That's got to cover medical treatment. That's got to cover everything and anything that goes into your pocket.
Mhm.
Right. Now, 80 to 90% of the time, that's enough money, right? The vast majority of accidents, you go to the doctor, you get some physical therapy, and you get better. And there's enough money to cover that, which is why it's set where it is. But if you get into a worse accident, you need injections, you need a surgery, you break a bone, something like that. That's all the money that's there. And if they weren't paying their premiums, there's not even that money.
Right.
So one of the best things you can do is make sure that you are insuring yourself.
Mhm.
And that's for car accidents, that's called insurance. And you can talk to any insurance person. If you've got Geico or State Farm, or you can call any agent to say, do I have And if they say no, say, can I put it on? It's not usually that much more expensive. And that will cover you no matter what, even if the other person doesn't have any coverage or doesn't have enough coverage. So that's the best thing you can do. There are, depending on how the coverage isn't there, a lot of times they'll lie about it or stuff like that. It can get really convoluted. Sometimes there is coverage and they just think there's not. It's more common in my experience that someone will say they have coverage, and then the insurance company, especially if you're with like the General or Safe Auto or something like that, those guys will say there's not coverage even when there is. There are rules about how you cancel coverage, when it can be canceled, whether or not something is covered. And so having someone who knows those rules and can figure that out is usually a good idea. It can be difficult to figure out sort of things, and a lot of times it does involve a lawsuit. Kemper Insurance is one's coming off the top of my head. The number of times they've sent me a letter that's like, there isn't coverage for XYZ. And then I'm like, okay, I'll file a lawsuit. And they're like, never mind, there is coverage without
there is coverage. I'll take that back.
Yeah. Wait, never mind. We don't like that answer. We're going to not lie to you anymore.
Yeah. Good.
The sort of thing. So those are all things you can do, but hands down, the absolute best thing you can do to make sure you are protecting yourself, your family, your friends, your loved ones, is make sure that you have insurance on your own car. Because insurance, even if you're in someone else's car, your insurance will cover you. Right. So
tell us again what stands for, Bo.
Yeah. So it's uninsured motorist coverage, and it also stands for underinsured motorist coverage.
Okay.
And so that's it. There's no coverage, like the person that causes the crash, if they have no coverage or they don't have enough coverage. Would cover in both of those situations up to whatever you're paying for. So like you can pay for an extra $25,000 on top of it, which is pretty common. It's a 2550 policy. I think mine, I'm up to about $2 million in coverage, because
that's
I've
awesome.
Seen what happens when there's not.
Absolutely. Right. Right.
And I would just want to make sure that I'm handling it properly, and that I'm covered. So that's protecting me, my wife, my friends, my family, whoever's in a car with me. And anytime I'm in a car, I know that no matter what the other person has, no matter how bad it comes out for me, I'm going to be okay, at least financially. So
if you're an ER doctor, you don't ride a motorcycle. And if you're a personal injury attorney, you make sure you have coverage. Right? You make sure you have coverage. So that's awesome. Thank you for that explanation. That was great. Let's jump on to our next question. This is a two-part question, and I want you to touch on it a little bit, Bo. So after an accident, where there is a fall or a car accident or any motor vehicle accident, we talked about motor vehicle accidents being more than just car. It can happen with a motorcycle. It can happen with a boat. It can happen on the bus. Any of those are still motor vehicle accidents. So when should I see a doctor after such an accident? And this is a two-part question. So when should I see a doctor? And what do I pick from? Urgent care, hospital, such as ER, or orthopedic care?
So from the legal side, I'm not a doctor. I cannot tell you how to make yourself better. I can tell you what I've learned over the years doing that sort of stuff, but I did not go to medical school. I would absolutely fail human anatomy.
What would you advise your clients in this sense?
Yeah. Generally speaking, I don't ever recommend someone get treatment if they're not actually hurt, right? Like I've had people call me up and say, I'm not hurt, but I heard I can get money if I go to the doctor. And I'm like, technically that's true, but I'm never going to advise you to do that, because I personally think it's kind of fraud, and I don't really like that. But if you are hurt, you're feeling pain anywhere, even if it's minor pain, right? Because I've had people that have some minor pain after a crash and it just never goes away, right? And they're actually a lot more hurt than they think they are. They just have a high pain tolerance, sort of thing. If you are in so much pain that you cannot survive, then you can go to an urgent care or a hospital. But either one of those places, we'll start with the ER. If you go to the ER after a crash, this is what's going to happen. You're going to roll in. You're going to say you were in a motor vehicle crash. You're going to tell them whatever hurts. You're going to go sit in the waiting room for anywhere between 45 minutes and 6 hours, right? And then you're going to get taken back. A nurse practitioner is going to poke you a little bit, say, where does it hurt? And they're going to say, all right. They're going to write you a note to be out of work for 3 days. They're going to give you some high dose ibuprofen and maybe some like naproxen, sodium sort of stuff, a muscle relaxer. They're going to tell you to follow up with an orthopedist in 3 to 5 days if you don't feel better. And they're going to charge you anywhere between $2,000 and $10,000 for that. And they do it every time.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can make it through the night, if you can make it through the day, there is absolutely no reason to go to an ER unless you absolutely have to, right? Like if you get into a car accident, you got a bone sticking out of your leg or something, then obviously you need to go to the ER. But if it's something where you're going to be driving yourself, there's no reason to go unless you absolutely just cannot survive otherwise. Urgent care is going to be mostly the same. They're not going to charge you as much, but most urgent cares, especially here in the Atlanta area, don't like car accidents. They don't want to treat you for a car accident. They don't want to do anything like that. And what they're going to do is there's a company, and I'm not going to name them, but they've got about 40 locations in the Atlanta area now. And they go around to every urgent care and says, anytime we know you don't like car accidents, and whenever you get an urgent care or whenever you get someone in for a car accident, just send them to us. And everyone knows who they are in my industry. I'm, again, not going to name them. All the insurance companies know who they are. None of us like them. Right? I don't like them because their notes aren't necessarily great. They provide treatment that doesn't get my clients better. They overbill my clients. They rack up bills that they do not need. Insurance companies know all of this just as well, so they don't pay when those are the treating doctors sorts of things. And it just ends up in this terrible kind of cycle of horribleness. And if you call me afterwards and I try to pull you out, the insurance company is going to argue, well, this doctor over here that everyone on my end agrees should not be a doctor doing this sort of thing. That doctor said we're supposed to do all this. Why did you all of a sudden go to this doctor over here? And the only reason you switched because you told me that doesn't look good in front of a jury or the insurance company. But if I leave you there, they're going to make the argument of they're overcharging you and you're not getting better and they're doing stuff that doesn't need. So it's a lose-lose situation.
Right.
So your best bet, generally speaking, in my opinion, is to skip all of that and either go to your primary care if you need absolute like immediate assistance sorts of things, or try to get into an actual orthopedist.
Right.
Sort of thing. Most orthopedists that do this sort of stuff keep appointments open for new car accident clients and fall clients and whatnot. So
you're right. We do. Yeah.
Sort of thing. And so it's not usually as difficult as it normally is to get in to see an orthopedist. Like tore my ACL at one point. And it took me, I think, a month and a half to get in to see an orthopedist. Sort of thing. Because I was trying to get it worked out with my insurance and all that sort of stuff. Whereas with the car insurance sort of stuff, we're used to this. We know how to do it. I know the guys over at Delta Ortho do as well. Where we know how to reach out, we can get you into an appointment pretty quickly, and they're going to start actually getting you better, right? Like they might prescribe some painkillers and everything, but they're going to do a full examination. Their job is to get you better. The ER and urgent care's job is to make sure you're not going to die in the next 48 hours. That's the only thing they care about.
Right.
So usually your best bet is to go to an ortho first, in my opinion. And that is the recommendation I usually give.
Yeah, I love to educate the patient a little bit of, when it comes to a car accident or a fall or whatever, and then we have to deal with a policy, typically with a motor vehicle accident. There's the aspect of the medical side, trying to get the patient better. There's the aspect of the legal side, trying to make sure that everything is done will be able to, be proven in a court of law by the attorney side, if it leads to that point. Sometimes it might be settled or whatnot. And then there's the financial side. There's what pretty much is allowed financially because of the policy limits. You know what I mean? And it's good to understand this. And when you go to, let's say, the ER, for example, and I'm not saying don't or do, it's really not up to us to tell you one way or the other, because it might be something that, maybe there's an internal bleed and you really need to go to the ER, something. So it's really not up to us to tell you one way or the other, but it's good for the patient as well as the client to understand that if you go to a place like that can eat up a lot of the policy. Let's say in state of Georgia, you have 25,000. You go to the ER, they do 2 or 3 CT scans to make sure that the worst hasn't happened, whatever. By the time you get out of there, not only did you get no relief whatsoever, But now you have a $5,000 to $10,000 bill on a $25,000 policy. Now you may think you have $15,000, to go to urgent care and chiropractic care and orthopedic care and chiropractic care, physical therapy. But what happens is that gets eaten up pretty quickly. And before you know it, a lot of patients, clients would like some kind of settlement with that for their pain and suffering as well, right? And but before you know it, that gets eaten up. So it's very good for the patient as well as the client to understand this. And this might be a simple phone call to your local orthopedic care that deals with personal injury, or your local representative law firm, Morrison and Hughes. They do a great job at doing this, to kind of give you a little bit of guidance, you know what I mean, within their legal rights, obviously. And that way you'll find the counsel that you need to do the right thing right off the bat. Okay. So it's very important that we do this. Let's go ahead and jump on to the next question. It's very similar to that of the question that we answer as far as the doctor and whatnot. But so the accident happens, the car accident happens, or the fall happens. How quickly should I consider getting an attorney?
Generally speaking, if you are injured or you go to the doctor and get any sort of sustained treatment, right? Like if you get in a car accident, you go to urgent care, and then you're fine, right? Don't ever get any more treatment or anything like that. You can probably handle that yourself. The insurance company is going to offer you to, more than likely, the insurance company will offer to pay for the urgent care bill, and they'll throw another couple $100 at you just to kind of make you go away, sort of thing. Right. And honestly, I'm not going to do any better than that in that situation, sort of thing, because that's probably what your case is actually worth. But if you think you were hurt at all, like you've got pain the next day or anything like that, you should go ahead and call an attorney. Yeah. Because at that point, the insurance companies are going to start harassing you. They're going to start calling you. They're going to try to start getting you to do recorded statements. They're going to start offering you checks. They're going to try to get you to sign things. They're going to start explaining how complicated the process is and why you just need to do this because it's in your best interest. Like I said before, their job is to not pay you anything. Their job is to pay their shareholders, sort of thing. So at any point in time, you're like, I need to go see an orthopedist. I'm not feeling right. Like something's wrong. That's when you should call a lawyer. Sort of thing. I've definitely had people call me from the scene of the crash. That's not a great option, to be completely honest. I can't help you that much other than say,
that's real. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I like that. That's real. A lot of attorneys will be like, hey, just call me anytime. I'll take your case. I'll take your case. But that's real, that you're making sure that the patient is, the benefit of the patient and the patient getting taken care of is what's most important. So that's awesome.
The last thing I want, because honestly, I mean, there are lawyers, you've seen their billboards and whatnot. They'll take absolutely anybody, sort of thing. But the type of lawyer I am, I want to make sure that you're coming back to me over and over again, that you're recommending your friends.
That's awesome.
And if I sign you up and you go to the emergency room, let's say you got a $2,000 emergency room bill, and the best I'm going to be able to do for you is $2,500 to pay for the $2,000 emergency room and your pain and suffering, which is probably about as good as I'd be able to do in that situation. Then you have to pay me on top of it as well.
All right.
And you can completely get that money on your own. Like you don't need me from that. You can call me and I'll be like, oh yeah, no, this is what you need to do. Call them up, give them this information.
That's awesome.
Sort of things. And because you can get the check yourself and it'll be better for you in the end.
Well, I don't know that I know one attorney that will actually do that. So that's really great heart from you. That's really cool.
Yeah. But yeah. As soon as you're like, I think I need to go see a real doctor, something is not right. Like as soon as you have that thought, you need to call a lawyer.
Yeah.
Because the insurance companies are going to do everything they can to tank any case that you have because that's their job.
And if you do come see us from an orthopedic standpoint, we will ask, that question. Where are you with your attorney? Because we need that information as well. And if you don't have an attorney, by no means are we going to pressure you into getting one. But if we find that it may be beneficial for the parties involved by any mean, we will definitely get you into contact with our friends over at Marston and Hughes for sure. Okay, we have Naira jumping in saying, "Do I need a lawyer for minor car accidents?" And Bo very well answer that. It's like it really depends,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
there's so minor accidents that you may not need a lawyer at all. It may just be something that you want to deal with your car insurance and just kind of call it a day. But do keep an eye on things because things may worsen depending on whiplash is real.
I will say, one of the things I do recommend for people who like go to the ER and they're like, no, I think I'm fine, sort of things. I'm like, wait 30 days, right?
That's a
If
good
in
idea.
30 days you're like, no, I'm fine, I don't need anything,
Yeah.
then call the insurance company, see how much money you can get them to give you, and walk away, sort of thing. But if in 30, a couple of weeks later, you're like, no, this isn't right. It still doesn't feel right, sort of things. Because I know, Lord, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, we had somebody call up here. They went to the ER. The ER said, you'll probably feel better in 3 to 5 days. It's common for, you to feel sore for a little bit. Here's your pain meds. They called the insurance company. Insurance company sent them a check. They signed the document within that 3 to 5 days. All right. They signed the document that said, I agree, this is the end of my case. 5 days went by and they still hurt. Right. And at that point, I can't fix that. You have agreed with the insurance company that that's all the money you are ever going to see as a result of your case. You cannot fix it. So even if you're not having the type of case that you probably need an attorney for, it's always a good idea to wait at least 30 days before you sign anything from an insurance company. But
that's a great idea. That's why we do this. That's why we do these programs, because this is really vital information. And then from an attorney standpoint, Bo, the patient waits 30 days, maybe doesn't see a doctor or provider, 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even from the accident. Is it still pretty relatively easy, for lack of a better word, for you to still attach that discomfort, that injury to the accident itself, and still be able to fight it and ensure a proper settlement or ending of the case?
So 2 weeks without treatment is about as long as you can go, and it'd be easy for me.
Okay.
It's like if you get treatment in the first 2 weeks, the insurance company's going to be like, why did you wait 2 weeks? La da 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 da. And then you waited 2 weeks because you didn't know how hurt you were, right? You didn't want to go. No one likes going to the doctor. No offense.
No, it's true. It's true.
Sort of thing. And so waiting 2 weeks to see if it's just some soreness that's going to go away versus not is fine, right? Like I can take that case any day of the week. If you get to that 3 to 4 week period and you have not seen any doctor, that's going to depend a lot on the severity of the crash, right? Like if you're in what most people call a fairly like minor fender bender, and you're like, you got a little dent or there's some scratches on the car, but like you can almost buff it out, sort of things. I can't win that case, right? Yeah. If you waited an entire 30 days and there's not a lot of property damage to your vehicle, there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Now, if someone drove into your back seat or your car rolled over or something like that, and you wait 30 days, I can probably refer that back, because a jury, again, everything we do is trying to convince 12 strangers. Right. 12 strangers can believe that your back was one way before your car rolled 3 times, and it's a different way after your car rolled 3 times. Right. 12 strangers might not believe that your back was one way before a minor tap in the rear bumper, sort of things, and after the minor tap, especially the longer you wait to actually report pain and to get treatment. Because some of it's not even getting the treatment. Some of it is having the documentation that you're in pain, because then there's someone else out there. Like there's a note that I can say, look, they reported pain now. They reported pain here. They reported pain here, like sort of stuff. You can kind of document that. Because by the time we end up in front of 12 strangers, it's going to be at least 3 years after your crash.
Oh, wow.
Like that's now I can get a lot of cases settled without having to go to court and all that. So that's not how long it's going to take. But in the worst case scenario, when we end up in front of a jury, it is going to be, I've never had anyone get in front of a jury less than 3 years from the day they got hurt. And so you trying to go back 3 years and remember, well, I mean, I remember I was in pain afterwards, but you don't remember how much.
Right.
Sort of thing that it just gets harder and harder to do. Whereas when you go to the doctor, they're y'all are filling out the notes every time. They report pain in X, Y, and Z body part. They report that it's 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, whatever it is, sort of things. So they've got all that reported there. Then I can put that in front of the jury and say, look, that you don't have to believe them that they remembered that they were in pain that long ago. Here's what they told their doctor.
Right, exactly.
Sort of thing.
And that's what we do in documenting. We call it subjectives and objectives. Subjectives that the patient kind of lets us know, and then the objectives that what we find from a medical standpoint that the findings are, and they can be extensive or they can be very minimal, and they can support the subjective findings, or they may not, and then that's the discussion to have, right? But definitely getting some of that documentation done, at the very least, from a medical standpoint, at the very least, getting some of the documentation started from a provider. If things get better, they got better. If things got worse, then you have that documentation to make sure that supports what happened during the accident, and that now when the attorney sits in front of or stands in front of 12 strangers, it's a little bit easier on them, if they even decide to take the case, because it might not be worth it, But hey, we're towards the end of our time. Let's do one more question, and then we'll just kind of wrap it up. Okay, so I like this question. It's a bit of a two-part question. So the car accident happened, but I was in my work car, or I was in work hours. So I was in my way to go from one office to the other doing work.
So those are, we here actually Morrison Hughes really like these cases, because we can potentially recover twice for you. And it's something that we actually specialize in. I think every member of our law firm has done workers' comp at some point. I don't do it anymore, and I don't think Hill does it a whole lot anymore, but everyone else in our office either does it exclusively or has done a lot of it, and we're very good at it. We have some of the largest settlements in the state of Georgia. I think we've got like 3 of the top 5 largest settlements in the state of Georgia for workers' comp cases. Because the thing to keep in mind for the workers' comp side of this, because it's a workers' comp and it's a PI case at this time, right? Like if you're in a work car, you were doing something for work, more than likely it's going to be a combination of workers' compensation and a personal injury case. And those are very different things. And how you recover on those can change drastically depending on a lot of factors. And if you don't have a pretty intimate knowledge of how both systems work, it's very easy for one side to mess up the other and vice versa. So like I know one of the other firms I used to work for, we did not do workers' comp in-house. And my boss at the time, God bless him, he had his friends that did workers' comp, and that's who we sent the cases over to and whatnot. And they would run it just like every other workers' comp case, not thinking anything about my PI case that I'm trying to build up for you and make sure we're doing right on that. Sort of things. And like, I'd be calling those guys up and like, hey, where are we at this sort of things? Like, hey, I'm about to do this. Is that going to impact your workers' comp case? And never got the call back, sort of thing. And so a couple of times I sent it over to those guys and sort of things. And then they would, they just completely mess up the personal injury side of the case, because there's different rules, there's different things, there's lots of different things going on, moving parts. And so one of the things I really like doing, in fact, I think one of the reasons I got hired over here is I started, anytime I had a case that I was going to keep the personal injury side of, I would call up Morrison Hughes before I came over here and let them handle the workers' comp.
Oh, wow. You were working with Morrison Hughes before you were working with Morrison Hughes. That's awesome.
Yep. Because I knew they knew how to do workers' comp, because the workers' comp I did, I was on the defense side, and they beat me up 3 or 4 times. Sort of things. I knew they knew how to do it, and I knew they knew how the interrelation between the two is, right? And so sometimes you kind of have to sacrifice one case. Like, we might not get you as good a result on the workers' comp side, but that's because we've got a really, really good personal injury case over here. So like,
Mhm.
we're going to get you a lot more money over here, but keeping you in the workers' comp system is going to trash this case, sort of thing. So like, knowing how to do that, when to do it, when not to do it.
Right.
I've
You
had
need
some
the
cases,
experience to be able to discern between the two. That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
and be able to know which one, what's going to get you the ultimate best result for the client, right? Because if you get, we've had some clients that got really, really hurt in car accidents. And there's like a 20, again, minimum limits covered sort of things on the PI side. There's only 25,000. We're not going to worry about the personal injury side, right? Because there's only $25,000 ever for cover all of your medical treatment. And, you know, we're talking about people that are like quadriplegic sorts of things, right? That $25,000 is not, that's a drop in the bucket sort of thing.
Right. For sure.
Right. So what we do is we set that one off to the side. We spend all of our time making sure we're doing the workers' comp side right, because there's mostly unlimited treatment on the workers' comp side, and that's what's really necessary for the client, sort of things. And so we'll do all that, knowing that the PI side is never going to get the client what they need and what they're entitled to, sort of things. And we have it on the other way. Like, I've got some on the other side where we got a client who was really hurt. She got in an accident, had a bone sticking out of her leg. Right. She was driving at the time.
Wow.
Bad accident. She was about to go in for like her third surgery, sort of things. And there's lots of money, like I think, on the PI side. We resolved her workers' comp issue and just pulled her out of the entire workers' comp system as quickly as we could, because the doctors on the workers' comp side are insurance doctors. They are hired by the workers' comp insurance company. Their job is to not give you treatment, so that can really mess up my personal injury case, sort of thing over here. And so those are they are, in my opinion, some of the most complicated types of cases that we handle from just a logistics sort of standpoint, and knowing how to work both systems. And even some of the bigger firms that have attorneys that do both, I have found that they do not talk to each other the way they should. Sort of things, because they've got all these systems in place, and they're like, when a case comes in, this is how you do it, and they do the same thing.
Right. You go into a trail or a track, and then it just kind of stays there that way, and the one doesn't hear from the other. And it's good to understand that not every attorney does workers' comp and personal injury at the same time. So it's good when you have the right understanding from both aspects, from both sides of the coin, and then can handle each accordingly, either both at the same time or one more so than the other, and kind of just like you be very strategic about it, to do what's best for the patient. It seems like we're come to an end. For those of you that missed our session today, this video will live on Facebook, and will also live on YouTube. We'll soon to start a program on Instagram and TikTok. Hopefully, Bo and all the associates can join us, and we can talk medical legal a little bit. We love doing this kind of stuff. It's easy for us, and it's fun for us. So as you guys have more questions, feel free to contact us here at Delta Orthopedics or Morrison Hughes. All the information will be attached below each video for everyone to be able to contact us individually directly. And if you have one question for the one or one question for the other, you're not sure who to contact, just contact someone, and we'll get you in contact with the other person, or we'll do our best to get you the information that you need. From us here at Delta Orthopedics and Morrison Hughes, we thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next Tuesday at noon.
Thanks.